Debate. Not much more to say really than that. We've got tonight's Democratic primary debate big on the brain today.
And our panelists here to give their thoughts on what might happen. Kristen Hahn is a Democratic strategist and senior advisor for Rock Solutions, and Johnny Burtka is the executive director of the American Conservative. Welcome to you both.
Great to see you guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So, shameless plug for us, we are doing for the first time ever live debate coverage. Very excited about this. That's why I'm talking about it in like literally every block. We're going to be 30 minutes live before the debate. We'll have an hour afterwards. We're also going to come in at the sort of halftime commercial break and give you a little play-by-play of what's happened so far. So make sure to join us tonight on the Hill's YouTube channel. Subscribe. Hit the bell for the notification so you don't miss it. Okay, there you go. Shameless plug out of the way. What do you guys expect tonight? Like, who are you looking at? Johnny, I'll start with you.
Yeah, well, I think it's going to be a great opportunity for Tulsi Gabbard to sort of punch back. I'm curious to see what she does to try to stand out from the pack, whether she'll go after Hunter Biden or
she
whether...
always stands out.
She does.
That's
she
one
always
thing you can say
stands
about
out.
her, whether you like her or not.
So, and then also looking at Bernie Sanders coming back from the heart attack, seeing what he does, whether he comes out swinging. So,
what do you think, Kristen?
Oh, I think it's interesting. You have these candidates who are trying to define themselves. Really, I'm really looking at the front runners, right? I mean, Tulsi's always interesting, but I'm really looking at the ones I think that can actually take the nomination. You know, Buttigieg has more and more kind of been trying to carve out this middle ground space for himself.
Yeah,
I think.
It's getting a little feistier.
It's getting a little feistier, and also, you know, you've got the Bernie Elizabeth Warren. Clearly, Elizabeth Warren, and on the farther left is pulling away. So I'm interested to see what happens there, and then you know, Biden's always very entertaining to watch.
Very entertaining indeed. You never know what's going to happen there.
No.
Record players could come up, corn pop could come up, like anything could happen. Who do you think on the stage tonight, Kristen, like this is a make or break moment for them?
I don't know about make or break. I mean, I think that we're going to shortly see a lot of these front runners kind of pull away from the whole pack.
Yeah.
I would really like to see Mayor Pete stand out a little bit more, if not only to just, I'm not sure about his electability. You know, you see people that they like him, but they don't, you know, quite know if they could think he could beat Trump.
Yeah.
But just to present some more of these ideas that aren't so far to the left.
Speaking of centrism and Biden, you know, impeachment is obviously going to factor huge tonight. What do you expect that, first to you, Kristen, what do you expect we're going to hear from, I mean, now it seems like every single candidate has now come behind, if I'm not mistaken, has come behind impeachment. We've seen the Democratic Party obviously solidify around this impeachment inquiry. What do we expect on impeachment, and is Biden going to be able to talk about that without dragging up the reason for it, which has a lot to do with him and his son Hunter?
I think that if we can stay away from, and I would be surprised if a lot of these candidates go after Hunter Biden. I think that's a distraction. I think a lot of them see that way. What we are seeing and what we saw over the last 2 weeks when we went into the field, and not just national polling, but district by district in these tougher districts, the polling, Democrats are no longer underwater on impeachment. It's becoming more and more popular, at least to begin an inquiry. So I think what you're seeing is a lot of these candidates who are much more comfortable being in that space and kind of being together in that space.
Yeah, I mean, I actually am not sure that it will be that much of a focus tonight because the candidates aren't that differentiated. I mean, you had Tulsi, who was initially the holdout. She told us here at Rising that after the transcript came out that there wasn't enough there. Next day, she jumped on board with everybody else in favor of an impeachment inquiry. So I'm just not sure it's that interesting of a line to go down when everybody is essentially on the same page.
Yeah, I mean, I think they'll probably paper over it pretty quickly. I think the moderators will likely ask a question about it, especially given the interview that Hunter Biden did on ABC.
Yeah, which we're going to talk about more in a minute, by the way.
Great. Yeah. But you know, ultimately, I think they'll probably move past that question pretty quickly. When Kamala Harris went after Biden at previous debates, it didn't really work out too well for her. So I don't really expect any one of the main candidates to go after Biden too hard.
Yeah, and what about Kamala Harris? I mean, she had that first debate moment. She got the T-shirts ready, right? You saw her jump in the polls. You saw Biden take a little bit of a hit that quickly equalized. She has really sort of fallen out of the top tier of candidates. So what does she need to do tonight?
That's a good question.
One.
You might
Whoever
be able to feel that better than me.
Yeah. I mean, I think that she's got to figure out, you know, where she wants to be in the midst of all of these candidates. And when you have somebody who's surging like Elizabeth Warren, it's just hard to pull it down. Although it's easy and things can change, state by state once you get into these early primary states. So
yeah, how do you think foreign policy is going to play in this debate?
Well, I certainly think the situation in Ukraine and Syria will be a main focus of the debate. You saw, last week as Trump moved to pull troops out of there, pretty much the whole D.C. establishment, whether it's right or left, reacting strongly against him. And I think even though I personally favor a more realist approach to American foreign policy, I still think the American people are fairly idealistic, and they don't, like images of, Turkey going after the Kurds. So I think the Democrats will probably...
not to mention ISIS prisoners escaping.
Absolutely.
Nobody likes that.
No. So it'll be interesting. I mean, I think I'm curious to see what Tulsi's response is, and if anyone else sort of joins her on a more non-interventionist position, or if Warren and Warren and Sanders are where they're gonna fall on this.
Yeah. So CNN is one of the hosts of this debate, and they just recently hosted, of course, this LGBTQ town hall. Elizabeth Warren, in particular, had a standout moment that we are now learning more about. Let's take a look at the moment, and then I'll tell you what we've just learned.
And a supporter approaches you and says, "Senator, I'm old-fashioned, and my faith teaches me that marriage is between one man and one woman." What is your response?
Well, I'm going to assume it's a guy who said that. And I'm going to say, then just marry one woman. I'm cool with that.
So what they didn't tell the audience is that gentleman happened to be a max out donor to Warren's Senate campaign. Like I said, CNN's monitoring that. I mean, why do they do that stuff? And what will make the audience feel like they are fair and unbiased when they're not transparent even in their own town hall?
I mean, it was a clever comment, but ultimately it was a political stunt, and they should have known that it would have come out, a few days later. So
yeah, what do you think, Kristen?
I mean, I think it was an LGBTQ town hall, and we all know where Elizabeth Warren stands on it. I mean, I think CNN should have been more transparent about it, but it's not like her answer is any different than it would have been before. What was very curious is that why would a man have said that? You know what I mean? I didn't understand that comment, but I didn't see anything too scandalous about this, other than them needing to disclose that type of stuff.
Is the role of the media in this becoming something that Americans are scrutinizing more, I think is the question. I mean, obviously on the Republican side, attacking the media and pointing out the bias and some of the even corruption and sort of narrative and intent behind media coverage is par for the course. This has been, it was even Newt Gingrich in 2012. This is part of our bread and butter. But what do you think the role of the media will be in this Democratic primary? Are we going to see more pushback between this stunt at CNN, between coverage of Andrew Yang, coverage of Bernie Sanders versus, for example, Kamala Harris? Are we going to see some of the same frustrations that we saw on the right, on the left? I mean, first to John, and then I'd like to hear Kristen on this too.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially if Warren continues to surge and if Biden starts to fade a little bit, I think a lot of the big Democratic donors are going to try to move pretty quickly to sink Warren's campaign, and so I would expect the spin to pick up pretty fast.
I mean, Warren has definitely been the media darling. How many hot takes did we see on how glorious her selfie lines are? You see CNN, picking one of her max out donors to ask her these sort of softball question. How much has the love fest from the media benefited her?
Well, I mean, enormously, right? I mean, the media has a powerful voice in all of this. I mean, I think it's important that they stay non-biased. It was interesting. I was reading something by a friend of mine, but you look at the coverage of Bernie's heart attack, and I'm not saying that should, versus the week of coverage that Hillary Clinton got for having pneumonia. And it's just wildly different. So I think you can look at it from, a male-female perspective. You can look at it from, and then we've got the whole, the dissemination of information through social media channels, which actually has me more concerned than, CNN.
See, I see that. I mean, they jumped all over him for waiting a couple days to release the, all the details. I don't know. I thought that was a little bit ridiculous. But these guys are going to stick with us. We've got more on the debates after a quick break.